Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Simpson from Resilient Changing, and this is the first in a series of 3 videos on the topic of resilience. In today's session, we're going to introduce the topic of resilience. We certainly live in what the US military coined as a phrase in the 90s as VUCA times, so volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And it certainly feels that way. We've got increasing demands from customers, shareholders, regulators, staff and other stakeholders, when we're often expected to do a lot more with less in the face of increased competition. And then COVID came along. Now, with these increasing demands, then we really do need to build a capacity to not only survive, but also to thrive, and not just now, but in the future. So how can we be more resilient? And the list of must-dos has got increasingly longer, and it can very much feel like this poor person in this picture weighed down by the sheer volume and burden of a variety of challenges. So we've got to keep it all together, as I said, to do a number of things. And we've got to cope with COVID, and often at a point when we're at home working, a big difference from working at home. And as leaders, this can be a challenge as well. So we've got to do all of those things as individuals and keep it all together, but we've got to do this and support staff and teams and help them sustain their performance and their well-being, often in different ways. So many people moving to lead remote teams and work in new ways, which are a new challenge for them. So there's a lot that's really draining the resilience battery. But before we get into that, let's actually introduce resilience. What is it that we mean by resilience? Well, first of all, a definition from the Resilience Centre. It's very much around the capacity to adapt in a positive way to whatever life brings. And it's really about adapting positively. It's not about preventing things from happening, but it's our response to those things. What is it that we choose to do? In a work setting, I like this definition from Warner, April and Astridge. So it's the ability to remain on task, productive and connected to the organisational mission whilst we're experiencing tough times. So it's those key points about being able to remain on task, to continue to be productive and still connected with the purpose of the organisation. And that's really challenging at the moment. So a couple of definitions. When we cover resilience, there are often many myths, and I'm just going to cover 4 and a few other interesting facts about resilience. So the first myth is that resilience is a capability. People often ask me, is this a skill that I can acquire, Mark? Well, resilience is actually a capacity. So our capacity can rise and fall very much in the way that our confidence can, our energy can. Resilience is a similar capacity in that respect. It's also a myth that resilience is actually something genetic, something that we're born with. The reality is that we can manage our own resilience capacity. In fact, a lot of what we do is linked to our environment and our response to it. So this goes right back to a study called the Danish Twins study in the 18th century that looked at the impact of people being around 20% genetic and around 80% environmental. It's also that resilience is considered to be just about bouncing back, so how we cope with adversity, when reality is that resilience is proactive as well. It's not just reactive. And if we spend time working on our resilience in a proactive way, we're less likely to be impacted by some of the challenges in life. The final one is that resilient people are superhuman. The reality is that resilient people suffer knocks in the same way that many other people do. The difference is they're very good at accepting them, accommodating them, rolling them, responding to them. A few other things about resilience, and we know this from research of over 3 million people from 150 countries over the last 30 years, conducted by the Resilience Centre, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. What we know is that resilience is not linked in any way to our gender. It's not linked to our intelligence in terms of being measured by things such as IQ, and it's not linked to our socio-economic class either. In fact, the only factor that has a meaningful impact is age. So as we get older, our capacity for resilience increases. Why? Because we have a toolkit of experiences that we can use. Now, personal resilience comprises of 5 essential characteristics, and this is from the work of Dr. Gail Wignold from the Resilience Centre, called the Resilient Core. It's a model I really like, having studied many, and it forms part of my work in helping individual resilience. Now, the Resilience Core comprises of 5 elements. The first, moving from the top left, is around our purpose. So it's about having a sense of meaning in our life, and a reason to get up in the morning. Ideally, that's at both a personal level and a professional level. The next is around perseverance. So it really is our ability and having that determination and drive, some call it grit, that we can keep going despite the fact that there may be challenges and adversities. It could be discouragement, it could be difficulty. The third element is equanimity, or what we call balance. So are we able to live with a balance and a harmony, and we choose our own responses to the challenges that we face? That could be acceptance, it could be a positive view of it, it could be a number of things. The fourth element, moving clockwise, is authenticity. So it's the ability for us to be really comfortable with who we are, so we're able to live in line with our values, in line with our beliefs, and accept ourselves as is and who we want to be. Now, the last element, and not least, is self-reliance. So it's the fact that we really understand and know our capabilities. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, we're aware of the resources that we can access, and we're able to use those effectively. So that self-confidence can be as simple as being comfortable to ask for help, to put our hand up and say, this isn't my strength, I don't have all the capability or capacity I need here. So self-reliance is not to be confused with doing it all ourselves. So that's a brief intro to the Resilience Core. In the next 2 videos, we'll delve into that in a lot more detail. So we'll go into more details of individual resilience, providing some examples. We'll also cover the resilience supports. So what are the foundations that really help our resilience? And then in the final session, we'll talk through our approach to developing resilience. So how we help individuals and teams and collective individuals to develop their resilience capacity and not just survive, but to also thrive. If you want to know more, tune into the other videos, or do get in touch and we can explain how we help with individual resilience, how we can help develop team resilience, and you can also visit the website resilientchanging.com to access other resources. Thank you.